They told me not to touch anything. That was the first thing Rennick said when I came through the secondary hatch with the water crate. 40 liters, divided into 10 sealed bags, balanced on a cargo sled I had been dragging across packed dirt since dawn. The excavation team had been inside the hangar for 9 days. I was the farmhand from the settlement 3 valleys east. I grew senna root and a strain of winter grain that could survive the thin soil of Tessad 4. I had no clearance, no archaeological training, no reason to be inside that chamber, beyond the simple fact that someone needed to bring them water, and I was the one with a working sled. The hangar was not what I expected. From the settlement we could see the ridgeline where the survey teams had cut their entrance, a narrow wound in an otherwise unremarkable mountain. But inside, the scale changed. The ceiling was so high that the floodlights the team had mounted along the floor couldn't reach it. I could see the first 20 meters of carved walls rising into darkness, columns of alien script running vertically, each character the size of my forearm. The floor was smooth and pale, covered in a fine powder that had not been disturbed in what Rennick's team estimated at 1,200 years. And at the far end of the chamber, filling the back wall the way a dam fills a canyon, stood the gate. I had heard about it. Everyone on the settlement had. 12 seasons of excavation, 3 full survey teams rotated through, 1 senior cultural attaché from the Interstellar Antiquities Bureau, and the gate had not moved. Not a seam, not a vibration, not a flicker. The surface was a single unbroken slab of dark metal, carved with geometric patterns that radiated outward from a central point, like the spokes of a wheel no one had ever turned. The carvings were deep and precise. The metal was cold. Every scanner, every frequency sweep, every chemical solvent, every brute force drill bit they had brought to bear on it had failed without exception. The Bureau's official position, I had heard Rennick quote it more than once over settlement radio, was that the gate showed no discernible mechanism and no evidence of a builder. That last part always struck me. No evidence of a builder, as though the mountain had simply grown it. I set the water down where they told me to. The team was clustered near a portable console at the gate's left edge, running yet another resonance scan. No one looked at me. I was supposed to drag the empty sled back out and return in 3 days with more. But I didn't leave. I could not have explained why, not in any language the cultural attaché would have accepted. It was not a sound. It was not a feeling I could name. It was something closer to recognition. The way you know your own land even in the dark. The way your hand finds the latch on a familiar door without thinking. The gate was familiar to me. I walked toward it the way you walk toward something you have been thinking about for a long time, without knowing you were thinking about it. Not fast, not slow. The powder on the floor shifted around my boots. Behind me I heard Rennick say something. My name, probably, or another warning. But his voice was a small thing in a very large room, and it did not reach me the way the gate did. I stopped 2 meters from its face. The carvings were sharper up close. The geometric lines were not decorative. They were structural. Paths, channels, locked into a pattern I could not read but could, somehow, follow. My eye moved along them, the way water moves along a groove cut for it, from the outermost ring inward, from the broad spokes toward the central point. I had never studied xenoarchaeology. I had never been off-world before Tessad 4, but standing before those carvings, I felt the same thing I felt when I checked a row of grain I had planted myself. The deep, quiet certainty that this was placed with intention, and the intention was not foreign to me. That was the moment I raised my hand. I did not think about it. My palm went flat against the surface. Fingers spread, centered over the focal point of the carved pattern. The metal was warm. That was wrong. Rennick's team had measured it at ambient temperature, barely above freezing, but under my hand it was warm, the way living earth is warm in late afternoon, the way soil is warm after a full season of sun. The first line of light appeared along the outermost ring. It was gold, not amber, not pale white, warm gold. The color of late harvest grain under full sun. It moved slowly, filling each carved channel from the outside in, as though something beneath the surface had been waiting to rise, and had only now been given leave. Behind me, the team stopped talking. I heard a console clatter against the stone floor. Someone said a single word, "Oh," very quietly, and then nothing. The second ring lit, then the third, each one closer to the center, each one brighter, each one carrying a warmth I felt not in my palm but in my chest, behind the ribs, in the place where breath begins. By the time the light reached the central point, the entire gate was alive. The geometric pattern that had been carved into dark, cold metal was now a lattice of warm gold fire, precise and ordered and patient, and I understood, not with language but with something older than language, that I was not reading this pattern for the first time. I was remembering it. The vibration came next, low and steady, not a sound but a resonance, that I felt in my teeth and in the soles of my boots, as though the mountain itself had drawn breath after 12 centuries of stillness. A hairline seam appeared along the gate's full height, not a crack, not a failure, a division. The two halves of the slab began to separate, slowly, with the deliberate patience of something that had been designed to wait exactly this long, and no longer. And then the gate spoke. Not in sound, not in any frequency the console would have recorded. The voice came the way the warmth had, through the hand, through the chest, through the center of the bone. 3 words, placed into the middle of me as calmly and certainly as a seed is placed into a furrow. Architect of the seal. The passage behind the gate opened into light. Not floodlight, not alien sun, something older and warmer, something that had been stored and held and kept against this single moment. A threshold glow that filled the space between the parted halves of the slab and spilled forward across the powdered floor like dawn arriving from the wrong direction. I stood in that light, and I knew. Not the details, not the era, not the method, not the name of the civilization that had carried my bloodline from wherever it began, to a grain farm on Tessad 4, where a woman pulled a water sled across hard dirt, and had never once been told she was anything more than that. The details would come later, parsed from records the passage held on its far side, sealed behind the gate I had apparently designed in a life so distant that even the mountain had forgotten everything about it except the shape of the key. And the key was not a tool. It was not a frequency, or a code, or a chemical compound. The key was a hand. My hand. The specific architecture of a bloodline the gate's builder had written into its plans 1,200 years ago, the way I wrote planting rows into soil each spring, with the calm expectation that something planted with care would, given enough time, come back. Behind me, Rennick and his team stood motionless. I did not turn around. The gold light from the passage lay warm across my face, and the carvings on the parted slab still held their glow, and the 3 words the gate had pressed into the center of me sat there the way a cornerstone sits, not because someone placed it recently, but because it had always been the first thing laid down. I stepped through the gate, not because I was brave, not because I had been chosen by something outside myself. I stepped through because the threshold was mine. I had drawn it. And the passage on the other side, whatever it held, whatever it opened onto, whatever it would mean for the settlement, for Rennick's shattered report, for the Bureau, and its missing builder file, and its 12 seasons of silence, the passage was not a mystery to be solved. It was a road I had built once, in an age I could not remember, for a journey I was only now beginning.